This conference will now be recorded.
Expect that the price is gonna change in 1 or 2 years? Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. And we've got Joan and Tom are absent, but 5 are here, so we have quorum. Next, the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? No. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll make that a motion.
Discussion, if not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Yes, I did.
I think Todd said aye, so 5-0-0. And then approval of minutes from the March 8th meeting.
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Okay.
As well be consistent.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, carries 5-0-0. Next, we've got public hearing number 4A, variance at 994 Gulf View Avenue. Have anything for us, Dylan?
Just some background. So building plans have been submitted, or the application for a variance has been submitted for a lot in the Highlands. Before we dive into too many details, we do have the applicant here. So we can open up the public hearing and ask any questions, or you can tell your story too.
Yep, open up the public hearing and if you want to just give us a little bit of a background on what the request is.
We are requesting a variance of 5 feet from the rear setback. Based on the difficulty this lot poses, just with the sort of high shape of it, it's only got about 60 feet to work with and depth on the north end of the lot. So we are just asking, like I said, from the rear setback, a 5-foot variance.
And there are plans in the packet, but I also brought the big ones too, if you needed to see bigger ones.
This is okay. Yeah. If you want one. No. Okay.
So rear yard is to the west.
Correct.
To 30.
Could we see the same problem in lot 10?
Yes. Yep. Some background on I'll call it that addition, is I met with Mr. Lennon last summer because the lots are non-conforming. Back when the plat was originally approved in the early 2000s, the underlying zone for this portion of the PUD of our Highlands is R1, and R1 requires, for example, 100-foot side yards. And on the plat, you can see the northern side yards are just about 70.
Yep, I guess the only question is it an oversized proposed dwelling that should be compressed so that they can meet the setback, or does it make sense that because of the lot size, practical difficulty, and the fact that of the unique shape of the lot that the variance should be granted, I guess is what it comes down to.
I could speak to that a little bit
Sure.
because I drew the house plan myself, and you have a 1,300 square foot minimum requirement for the footprint, and to squeeze 1,300 square feet into that lot is extremely difficult.
Right.
Because of the shape. 1465, I think it is.
That's the current square footage?
Yes. All living space, main floor living space. So we did not overextend, I don't believe, right? 100 square feet is all we are over.
Right.
And it was difficult to fit this house onto that lot.
Like you're trying to build some massive size structure and then ask for setbacks because of that. It's
No, absolutely.
kind of fits in with the other size of the homes in the area.
Definitely does. In fact, if anything else, it's maybe just a little bit smaller. It's just a matter, this is a matter of the shape of the lot.
Anybody, I'm assuming notice was sent to the neighbors. Anybody have comments or questions?
We're neighbors.
Yep.
We don't have any
No,
problems.
okay, all right.
We're interested in hearing about it.
What neighbors are you guys? Just for,
Across the street.
Across the street, 989.
is that by, I know where Rodericks are? Are you on the other side? They have the basketball court in back? I'm just trying to,
Yeah, we're the
Yeah,
other
the
side.
other side?
Right.
Is that where Jason Martin lives? Is he 2 houses down from you, probably?
Millers are, I believe, right next to.
Yeah, they're
this
across the street. So
and then-
this lot will be just north of our neighbors, right, directly.
Okay.
To add to that, from the public hearing notice, we've received 2 letters of support for the variance, one from the developer, understandably. In meetings with him, he's expressed the desire to get these sold since last summer. The other one is from the Millers, who is the abutting property to the south. His only concern that he raised was when building a home, water mitigation purposes, potentially affecting his lot, which hill, he'd be the one downhill from any type of build. So he asked me if I could relay that to you.
Is he talking about drainage, in the Highland Reserve, or is he talking about during the construction process, or both?
I would assume both. He hired a landscaper who identified that there's a drain tile, I believe, between this property and his own too. And he said he'd be open to have conversations if you wanted to tap into that. But yeah, it was a letter of support that was just concerned about the water mitigation.
And I know personally, I've had some conversations with Randy Lennon, same thing. Smaller lots, different size shaped lots. I know that was gonna be his concern on that. So, I mean, I'm okay with it. Just, it's not a big house. It's not like Matt had said, you're not putting a huge house on a small lot, so.
And there's no house on lot 10 right now, right?
No,
Either?
There's not, and if it's, I mean, of interest, we are interested in purchasing 10 of this as well.
Okay,
This year, we're building up.
okay. I was
so
just
are you guys the
wondering,
builders or are you guys gonna occupy it? The builders?
The builders and the
Oh, okay.
no, I was just wondering, like, if we did allow the setback to be reduced on lot 1, would we also be looking at that on lot 10?
I would assume so, yeah.
So, it brings them both in.
The consideration I always take is which property it's encroaching on. So it would be that lot 10 most affected by the backyard encroachment.
Is that park just to the north of this lot then? Is that where just the park is on that little tip of that little?
To the north.
Anything there?
I think there's a
Playground.
I mean, pretty basic, nothing crazy, but.
Any other comments? All right, I'll close the public hearing, and then we'll go right to 6A or 5A, old business on the variance. As usual, we have to make some findings one way or the other, and then it's a recommendation to council.
I mean, I guess my opinion with practical difficulty, the lot size or the lot shape, I'm okay with it, 5 feet. I mean, if it was 15 feet or something bigger, I think we might have addressed that issue, but 5 feet, I'm not.
So down the list then, practical difficulties because of the unique shape of the lot. Apply to landowners due to the circumstances unique to the property and not created by the landowner. Is that general consensus?
Yep.
Variance wouldn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Variance requested is the minimum that would alleviate practical difficulty and wouldn't be materially detrimental to the ordinance or to the other adjoining properties. If those findings are all make sense, then it probably makes sense to make a motion to recommend approval.
I'll make that motion to approve the variance for 994 Gulfview Avenue.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Carries 5-0-0. And then, so that'll go in front of the city council at the next meeting. Thank you. 6A, new business, minor subdivision lot consolidation procedure.
In the past, probably 2 months, we've had 2 or 3 requests for lot consolidation around town. And in diving into it more, Matt and I had a few conversations over the weeks about when it's a conforming residential lot, it's historically not been approved. But there are instances where consolidation of lots seems most appropriate. So what I did was I just attached a quick few pictures in your packet you see from the GIS. Take, let's just start with 12. This is the one we probably see the most where someone's backyard is in a different parcel than their primary residence. So for example, if they wanted a garage or a shed, they'd have to number 1, not build on property lines, and number 2, abide by the setbacks, which how do you fit setbacks on a smaller parcel? I think they get more drastic example-wise, as you can see. The next one, parcel ending in 0120 belongs to 220 2nd Street. That one was, someone stopped into the office asking why they had 2 property taxes. So we discovered that quickly. Taking page 14, parcel ending in 2492 belongs, as you can see, via the driveway to 235 12th. If they were to ever need to redo that building, how do you fit the setbacks on there? And then my favorite one I found is page 15. I don't have an explanation for what happened there. There's 1, 2, you know what I mean? So generally lot consolidation is not common. Most cities do not have language around it outside of through the minor subdivision process. But what I should say is not that there's not a process, there's not a criteria that needs to be met. So one of the things that I wanted to bring forth is just probably consideration towards either a criteria that needs to be met towards lot consolidation, or we can just make it simple and take it on a case-by-case basis, which, especially in that last instance, it's self-explanatory just looking at it. But I wanted to bring it before everyone because historically, it would just go to council for lot consolidation, but then we found out it can go through a minor subdivision process, even though that doesn't make sense because it seems like it's the opposite. But I attached our minor subdivision language on page, which one? Page 5, minor subdivision. So that one, the very first one says when the intent is to divide a land by adding one parcel to another. So we have a process for people to go through, but maybe you want to chime in on this, Matt and Todd, too. It's generally not advised when it's conforming residential lots. So that's kind of where my hangup is. And what I mean by that is if you have 2 buildable lots, we generally don't want to combine them because you can get 2 houses on those. But that then saying it's not allowed leaves room for error for these. I don't know, what are your?
For sure, newer parts of town, newer subdivisions, I mean, like that last one up on 13th or whatever it was, probably the intent when that Meyerhofer first was platted was homes on each of those lots. Now, I guess council allowed it because maybe those two, nobody was building on those two lots at the top of the hill or something, but older parts of the town, that's a completely different story. This stuff,
Yeah.
is probably there for 80, 100 years, who knows?
Yeah, well, especially that last page.
And you really can't control it. I've seen it, like I told Dylan, there's some subdivisions in Wanamingo. The lots are 20 feet wide. So most property descriptions are like lots 1 through 6. And it's all consolidated as one tax parcel, but you got 6 individual lots. And as long as it's one tax parcel, you're good. I don't think you need to worry about, the definition of what's a lot line, I think is more important on tax parcels than just actual platted lots in that situation. I don't think we'd want to force like a replat on all of those where they have to spend money to get it resurveyed and replat it and all of that. But older parts of town, we're just kind of stuck with it. I don't think we can impose anything on them unless we come up with some unique idea to do some sort of lot consolidation eventually. But newer parts of town, newer subdivisions, I think that's a different story.
That brings up a good point, because our minor subdivision criteria to grant one, you need a certificate of survey. And if you look at the last page, making that person pay for a survey and the minor subdivision fee, I'm not making the decision there.
And, minor subdivision, that's when somebody comes to City Hall and says, I want this done, and you gotta have it surveyed. The county recorder wants a survey done, and
I suppose you have to for the recording purposes because the county requires it. Yeah.
Versus City Hall saying, look at these old parts of town here. We want you to consolidate these, and we want to force you to pay $750 to get it resurveyed. I don't know if that would go over very well. But, a lot of those descriptions are just lots and blocks anyway, like the east 30 feet of lot 1, block 1, city of Zumbrota and all of that. I mean, it's, I don't know. We've gotten to this point for decades and it hasn't been too much of an issue. I don't know how much we want to go looking around and asking them to consolidate versus if something new comes or a building permit comes on an existing property, that's maybe when we should think about asking them to consolidate possibly.
Yeah. I would say overall lot consolidation is not common, again, because usually things are certified during the platting process. But the old parts of town is where you see some, unique situations going on.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have, like Dylan and I were talking, in the past, council just had this kind of policy that they want to encourage homes on each lot to increase tax base and whatever. I don't know if we could conjure up some sort of additional ordinance that would have some more factors to consider, or like Dylan's saying, just take it on a case-by-case basis. I don't know what other factors there would necessarily be.
Yeah, I thought about it all month in the sense of it almost seems like there should be ordinances or let's call it a qualifying criteria for lot consolidation. But in researching other cities, and I mentioned this to you on the phone, no one else has anything. So I believe they do it by a case-by-case basis, which helps the most amount of people too, because everybody's, every one of those examples, for example, is a little bit different.
Concerned me though is in the past when this has come up, people have asked the county and the county says, well, if this is in city limits, you've got to go through the city hall.
Yeah.
But with turnover, that unwritten policy sometimes gets lost. And Dylan said the last time this got asked, the county said, sure, we can consolidate lots. We don't need city approval on this. It's just like, really?
Yep. They said without saying names, there was two just in the past year that they consolidated, and we just had no idea about it. But I don't believe that those necessarily were hopefully, vacant lots. It might have been maybe examples like this, so maybe that's why they weren't noticed. I have no clue.
Something like in Monomingo that you were talking about, where they're just doing the consolidation for tax purposes and the lines still exist, but they don't really matter.
Right. I don't know what those instances were. It just concerned me that the county was doing this without requiring any type of city
Yeah.
approval. I mean, this is kind of a zoning
Any
thing.
land use amendment within city lines should go through the city before
Yeah.
recorded at the county, let's say. Because it's not that they make the decision at all. They
Yep.
just record a decision. Yeah, but no, I spoke with them and I asked them if you could just let us know, because we'd just like to look over it type of thing.
Okay.
But, yeah, not that the motion or anything's needed on that. It's more food for thought, and if you want to explore it more, I think, it's a conversation that can be had.
With this parcel on 9th Street and Lally, when that got joined to 533 Lally, did that go through the city or did they just do that?
When that got joined,
When this one got joined to this one?
it didn't. These are currently existed separated parcels under same ownership. These are just examples of what potentially we could see as people requesting, like I could see this person showing up wondering why they have two tax statements. And
Yeah.
I
Or they
know
would-
why. They're not, that bare lot in the back isn't part of the subdivision. So you can't combine them. As you see, 72, what is it, 260, that's, or, no, 6, I can't read that.
533 Lally?
Yeah, 72, 260, and then you got a 72, 680.
And then, 72, 680, yeah. And then up here, you got a 72, 650. So I think those are all in different subdivisions. One might be Baycott subdivision number 1, might be Baycott subdivision number 2. Is that a cow?
Yes. Oh, it's like how
And then this other one, I think that might even be like a meets and bounds, if I remember right. Was that Lawler?
It was
Jim?
Lawler's.
Yeah, so I think that it was something goofy where this bare lot never got into the original plat, so you can't combine parcels unless you replat it. So it's, it's weird stuff like that. This wouldn't be buildable, right?
And I will say that the county attests to that too. They will never consolidate lots that are part of different plats. So they always make, like, for example, this person would have to replat, record the plat of the property.
Here, or was it Ryan, when Jimmy, James,
Oh, by me,
huh?
James Bowman.
James Loman, yep. He had, he's got this house over in Myra Second, and then he bought some lots behind it that didn't have direct public access to a street. And they were, so, and those lots were not in the same subdivision as Myra Second. So what we did is we said, fine, you can, was it for a building permit or what
You
was it?
built the garage on it.
Yeah. So we said, you can do that, but these two, since this is a landlocked parcel, these two lots need to be tied together. And since they couldn't be combined because they're in different subdivisions, we had him do a deed restriction that gets recorded that says these two lots, and with legal descriptions, all have to be tied together in mortgages, deeds, and everything. So, we could do that type of situation here. Brian said that that's been done in Rochester and we did it here. So that's one option, to require these lots to always stay together. Anyway, enough on that. Then now we're on to 7A building permit report.
Yeah, so just at the beginning of this month started Q2. So the report for quarter one, I just highlighted some of the notable items. Each quarter I have to send a report to the county for building permits. And then all of them get combined to the annual report, which you guys saw last month. But we had 33 permits in quarter one. Total value added was about 3.5 million. And then one of the other statistics is we had 9 single-family homes, which is a little bit higher during that tail end of winter. But the most fascinating stat amongst that is the average price of those new builds was $366,000. So if you remember the annual report from last month, reporting back from data from 2021, average price to build a home in 2021 was $267,000. 2020 was $220,000 something. Obviously, this one, there's not much of a sample there with only 9 homes, but it keeps going up.
Okay. Questions? Is 7B?
Yeah, so this one kind of segues into it. I attended just this morning, Olmsted County's Housing Department held Affordable Housing Summit down in Rochester. One of the topics they wanted to talk about was equating affordability with new builds, which personal comment is that's an oxymoron. But nonetheless, there was almost 100 of us in the room, developers, government officials, commissioners, and we all talked about topics and how to bridge gaps when it comes to affordable housing and then new builds. It was more of I'll call it a working session. I thought I was going to go there and learn a lot from speakers, but they put us into small groups and made us find answers ourselves type of thing. But overall, it was a good networking event. It's the topic of affordable housing is not regionally specific. And affordability with new builds and building prices is rampant across the nation. So it's just good to raise awareness and make the connections. I've never seen so many developers in a room, for example. So that was, interesting and good from my department's standpoint. But they're going to be having more sessions like this, and we're working towards some solutions type of thing. Topics discussed as far as solutions were some of the obvious, like high density residential or higher density residential, let's say, smaller homes, trying to efficientize the building process by manufacturing homes instead of individually unique homes, things like that. But those are all things that we know now. And yeah, it was interesting though.
Are there any subdivisions with little sections devoted to like tiny home lots, or isn't that
Currently?
happening yet around here or around in this region?
So I've heard Lake City has, they don't want to call it tiny homes. Nobody really wants to say the word tiny homes. There's a lot of, but higher density residential, I heard that they had one that they just started recently in the past couple of years. We are working on a higher density residential project here as well. That's all I can say on that right now.
It was supposed to be high density and more compact lots and more those types of starter homes,
Yeah.
But I think the costs are getting out of hand, aren't they?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, Woodlands has a lot of townhomes in it too, and smaller lots, a lot of R3.
And then C?
Yeah, so was it last week or the week before? Todd, I, Brian met with U.S. Senator Tina Smith, and we walked the grounds of a water looping project upcoming. Mr. Lohman came in, was that a few months ago, looking for an update on his land. Was it Eric Lohman?
Eric, yeah.
And we have $1 million dedicated towards extending infrastructure across 52 to the west side of 52. From our commission standpoint, that we're going to see more projects as a result once that's finished, because people have infrastructure, so people are going to want to buy the land. So it's overall was an amazing thing to have happen. Todd, do you want to recap the backstory? We applied for, what was it, 460?
We applied my first couple months of being mayor to Angie Craig had a grant for some water looping project. I think it was 460,000, I think. submitted to the state, somewhere, somehow, Amy Klobuchar saw that, and ear tagged it and went to the federal step to get the other 540. Don't quote me in the exact numbers, but it was roughly $1 million. So Amy Klobuchar added I think they call it an ear tag or whatever, earmark, and got it to the federal, and was in the federal budget. There was a lot of, Angie Craig and both Amy Klobuchar had been in contact with me to kind of let me know where it was at, stuff like that.
Why does Amy Klobuchar care about water looping? Just curious.
Because we're in her region.
Yeah.
So she was trying to put that into the federal budget to help her state. So that's how Amy Klobuchar got it, because originally it was just on a state level that we're looking for the funding. And Amy Klobuchar got to handle it and brought it to the federal funding to get us into their big federal project. So why, I mean, and Tina Smith,
It fits their initiatives. Infrastructure is huge right now with all the dollars the past 2 years. Clean water, efficiency of infrastructure. I mean, they said it at one point and they said it pretty well. It fits the bill for what they're looking for, which thankfully for us.
which was the drinking water, I think is the category that Angie Craig had put it in, and then that's where Amy Klobuchar had put it in. And I don't understand all that politics and really have no interest to understand all that. But we got $1 million for the city, which was a project that we were going to have to do, and I think originally it was $700,000. I know there were some holdups with some of the landowners of how we were gonna do it, if we were gonna go through the land or if we were gonna have to do it along the right of way of the Highway 52. So that was kind of the thing. So I personally don't know how or why Tina Smith got involved. Obviously, she's our other US senator, so I don't know. I mean, I thought it would have been more of an Amy Klobuchar coming and visiting, but but whatever. We got $1 million for the city of Zumbrota by initially filing for a grant that got seen by the right people. We got more money, so I guess we still don't know where that money's coming from or where or how or when, but right, Kim? I don't think we've heard that yet. So that was Tina Smith. It was just because she was down visiting Rochester. It was all over the news. And she wanted to come and see what that was going to do. So we met her right on site. So, I mean, it was neat to meet Tina Smith, but well, whatever. I mean, I got to be careful, but
Okay.
so, I mean, it was good. I mean, and I tell Brian that all the time is there's tons of money out there. We just need to apply it from DNR grants to state grants. I know we've been pretty fortunate on some. And
Well, a lot of it is what's called congressionally, something spending that they have going, directed spending. In each, the US senators, the governor, every representative has funds that they can CDL or CDS or whatever the acronym is. I got a letter in my desk right now for it too. One of the problems that I see is you have to fit categories, and they open up the point where you can send in applications and then it closes 2 weeks later. Well, sometimes when it comes to $1 million project, you can't even fathom thinking about what you should request in 2 weeks. I mean, we couldn't send Bill a letter saying, hey, Bill, draw us up $1 million infrastructure plan extending, you know what I mean? That's one of the things I don't get. I don't get how short of a time you can request these funds. So I believe it's one of those things where if you have a project and you're looking for it and then it opens up, it's kind of a saving grace type deal, which happened to us in this instance. But otherwise, I wish we could ask for more money. And, you see how much is going around and how much they're looking to allocate.
I wonder if you just put together some basic thing and then just throw your hat in with all these different projects. And if anyone bites, then you have to scramble, I guess. I don't know how that works.
And we're doing that for the wastewater treatment facility as well.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Was it a state bonding tour when they came through?
that's where they came on site and visited, got on that. I mean, I don't know if you've been following that. We're trying to get $42 million from the state for our North Zumbro water treatment facility. It's about an $84 million project. So we had just hired a law firm out of the cities to do our lobbyists up there. We interviewed a couple different lobbyists, decided to go with one. All 4 communities is paying a fourth of it. So we got the tribal community on board, and their lobbyist is after. I mean, this could be a big deal if we can get it through. I mean, it's a big hill, but I think we're getting up it. So it's.
All right, so John, you here for comment or?
I was just gonna see if you had looked over much of that stuff that I'd given Brian, that proposal to change the ordinance.
Well, I don't know, is there anything staff's been working on or?
Yeah, we had a work session with council, was that just last week or the week before? From
31st, was it?
31st, yeah.
2 weeks ago. The council directed Brian and Todd, I believe you mentioned you wanted to be there too. They're going to reach out a time to schedule to meet with you to go over some of the findings and things of that nature. And, you know, comparing variances, going through the criteria of granting variances. This one here, practical difficulties were imposed by the land and not the landowner. Speaking with Mr. Bigelow, or Mr. Lennon, I should say, because it's Bigelow Lennon is one of the companies. They're well aware of, they have non-conforming lots up there. And I've always pictured it, and what I've learned in my time here is when that plat was approved in the early 2000s, you know, 95% of it was conforming, and you'll deal with the unique Tina's lot last summer at a later time. And so we're dealing with some of those now.
Because it's getting full. I mean, they're running out of space. I mean, and it's, if you've been out to the lower subdivision that they've opened up, I mean, they're pounding them houses out. I mean,
Even the 6th edition just opened up.
that's the one, yeah. And there must gotta be 8-10 houses up there already.
I think there's about 10, 30 in total going to be built.
Okay.
So to go back to John's, and we've been talked about, I know we discussed it at a work session. It was just something that we were going to set up at a time to sit down and talk to you and see what we can do. There's still some council that's got to look at the situation maybe a little bit different in some different avenues.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know where Brian is at on that. Obviously, he hasn't talked to you to setting it up yet because you're here.
No, I just said I'd wait to hear back from him. It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then like you said, we had a work session on the 31st and it was heavily discussed, so.
The other question I asked him, what year did the city start enforcing all these rules? He thought it was when Tommy Thompson took over.
What all rules?
All these feet and number of buildings and.
Whatever the ordinances. Yeah, so I mean, and they've all probably been different at different times, I assume, and I mean,
think
and
the latest version, it was like 2000-ish, wasn't it?
Yeah, and any amendments post that will be listed in the ordinance too. I see that earlier.
You know, because on my original application, I'd put in there, well, you know, my neighbors to the north have got these pole buildings. I don't even like to call it pole shed. I think everybody gives it a
Yeah,
bad.
aren't those ag zoning? Ag zoned?
doesn't that change once you get on Maple, is it Maple? Walnut? Where does Maple at? Why always say Maple?
The neighbors are different zones that fall under different performance standards.
You see, now I hear this, you know, and then it was before, well, we don't have no building permits for these, we don't have those, so those don't count. But a shed like that, that's what I want to, you know, it'll look like that for my neighborhood. You know, but now, you know, if you were enforcing these rules, I was thinking maybe all my accessory buildings are grandfathered in, I don't know, they've been there so long. You know, I've gotten building permits in 2013 and 15. If it was an issue, it should have come up before all my storage sheds.
But what was all your individual storage sheds applied for zoning wise?
You don't need a building permit for them ever.
I think, isn't it 200 square feet, you have to have a permit?
So to touch on a few of those topics, number one, a majority of your neighborhood is R2. not ag. So just because you abut ag, well, technically your neighbor does. It is different zones. You know, you could live next to commercial district, doesn't mean you can build a gas station on your residential lot.
Yeah.
The other thing is non-conformance is grandfathered in, but when proposing development, it has to come into conformance. And so no one's going around town checking who's out of non-conformance. We could spend all time, you know, all day doing that. But now a project has come, and so conformance is what we require people to come into.
My point is, those buildings are already there. I don't want to see them tearing down. But why is it an issue if I want to build something to match that when it's right next door?
Because like you said, you
Different
have to go into compliance, which you're out of compliance, so you want to do something. I assume you have to be in compliance to do something. I think the best thing, reach out to Brian, or I'll have Brian reach out to you, and we'll sit down and just see, look at it, and then look at different, I mean, I don't think anybody on council was absolutely not. I think they're all, let's see what we can do to help out, John, and that's,
I almost get the feeling nobody in town cares if I build this thing except for the people in this room between the city council and the planning commission, because you're strapped by the rules.
and that's our job. I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
that's, the average person on the street don't care, because they don't have to buy the rules.
You
It's
should
just,
apply to get on the planning commission.
I should.
Then you know how it works.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'd have some new ideas.
Right? Okay, well, hopefully that meeting can
so,
happen.
yeah, so the best thing, reach out to Brian, or
Yeah.
Brian and I talk sometimes too much, but I think I spent 2 hours in this morning talking politics. So, I mean, reach out to Brian, I'll mention to Brian that we'll sit down.
I listened to these talks about consolidating lots and all this and that, and I thought, all I want to do is build a shed. What's 5 feet make height difference? In the long
But
run.
it's ordinances, and I mean, if you don't have those, and you just say, well, what about 8 feet? And then, well, if you gave John 5 feet, I want to go 8 feet, what's 3 more feet? So that's
See,
why we have them ordinances.
That's where you missed my point on Mike Clue's garage, which is probably 20 plus. I want to know if you've ever gotten people driving by there going, I want a garage that size.
That matches the house is for one, and I think it got grandfathered in. Yeah, so I think that was
But do you ever get people driving by going, why can't I build a garage like that?
probably all the time.
Yeah.
And then when they come in and explain to it, we say, okay, that was built in the 70s, it matches